Hi, I'm Iwan Fox and welcome to the latest 4BR Review podcast, where I'm joined by my colleague Chris Thomas to look back at last weekend's RNCM International Brass Band Festival in Manchester, as well as look forward to the Norwegian National Championships in Bergen. In addition, we hope to squeeze in a few recommendations on upcoming concerts, events, CDs, and even a couple of LPs to add to your collections. Long regarded as one of the most important artistic events in the banding world, the RNCM Festival certainly lived up to its reputation this year, with a series of outstanding performances from leading bands and soloists on a wide-ranging arc of repertoire, including some of the many fantastic major works by the festival's featured composer Philip Sparke. Lots to get through then, and as always, your views and opinions are key. So please be part of the live discussion by posting your comments in the YouTube comments box on the screen, which will come up in a few moments' time. So, hi Chris. In our last review podcast, we said we were looking forward to the RNCM Festival, and you have to say it certainly lived up to expectations.
Yes, evening Ewan, evening everyone. Didn't it just Ewan? I mean, what a great weekend of music making it was. I mean, and there was a real buzz, I think, from the Friday night. There was a buzz of excitement. There was a great atmosphere. You could tell the expectant sort of atmosphere of people waiting for their favourite performances and the host of premieres that we had. And I think one of the most impressive things for me is that this is David Thornton's third festival, following him taking over from Paul Hindmarsh, and in just those 3 years he's really made the festival his own. I mean, there have been subtle changes, nuances, but very much an accent on emerging creative talent, which I think was particularly noticeable for me this year, and was actually one of the absolute delights of the weekend. Fabulous performances, of course, fabulous soloists, and just a wonderful weekend of excellence as far as the music and the repertoire was concerned.
Yeah, so many highlights there. But as I say, first of all, congratulations to Artistic Director Dr. David Thornton.
Absolutely.
There he is on the screen. He was out for a run, I think, on the Sunday morning when I
bumped
into him.
He came into breakfast in his shorts, which... Yeah, we'll say no more about that.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it. I was just trying to get myself off for a cup of coffee to wake myself up, but he was out and doing that. So they're fantastic. His curation of the event, as you said, has really brought it on in leaps and bounds as he's taken over from Paul Hindmarsh. It really has done that. And I think to the RNCM itself for the support that it continues to give. It really does embrace the ambition of the festival for being the showcase for excellence, as you said, for the brass band movement.
Yeah. And
so
great
plenty to get through.
Ewan. I mean, noticeably looking around, we were talking about this earlier, and just saying that the audiences, I mean, even on the slots on the Sunday morning, for instance, which the graveyard slot, as we used to call it, really good audience in for the RNCM band, which was great.
Well, I think we better pile on straight into the music.
Absolutely.
The featured festival composer, as we said, was Philip Sparke, ostensibly honouring his 75th birthday. There he is. He does, as we said, he does look good for 70. Mind you, he is 74. He's not 75 until another 10 months' time. Yeah, so I think, well, you never know. Come now next year, we could have a 75th come 76th birthday party and get plenty of his music in. So great stuff. I have to say, he was absolutely thrilled, very humbled, I think, by... the approaches that people were coming up to him and thanking him what he's done for the brass band movement with his compositions, but he enjoyed every single performance. He really did there. And as I say, just about every band played something from his amazing back catalogue, from his first work, Concert Probably from 1975, to his latest, I think, which was Lucerne Dances, which I heard at the Swiss National Championships. And of course, just announced before the festival, Music of the Spheres, which will be used at the British Open Championships in September. That was really good luck that came in at the same time from that one there. So every one of them was a treat for the audience. As we say, we had Foden's playing Partita Tredegar, Land of the Long White Cloud, Junior RNCM, Lucerne Dances. We had London Overture with the RNCM Brass Band, Ravelling and Unravelling with Corey, Music of the Spheres with Brighouse, and also that Concert Prelude with the Yorkshire Youth Band. And the Gemini Duet from him. As I said, it was a real treat for the audience, all superbly played, and a reminder, I think, Chris, of his innate and concise craftsmanship, especially with the works for the contest environment. It was a real reminder of just how he stands head and shoulders really above any other composer for the brass band medium over the last 40 or 50 years.
Well, it's where you start with Philip's music, isn't it? I mean, you're looking down that list of pieces that you just quoted that were heard at the festival. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to have been in David's shoes trying to choose the Sparke pieces that were to be played here, because there's just so much choice amongst a huge catalogue of remarkable consistency, as you said. And one of the amazing things about Philip's music is we heard pieces, very early pieces, and we heard Land of the Long White Cloud, we heard Concert Prelude was the very first piece he ever wrote for brass band in 1979. And it's a small piece, and yet it sounds like Philip Sparke. I mean, his language was kind of fully formed at that point, even very early in his career. And he told us the story, in fact, of how he came to write for brass band. He had no involvement with brass bands at all. It was R. Smith that approached him, gave him a copy of Eddie Gregson's Prelude for an Occasion, and said, "Can you write something like that?" and that was his initiation into brass bands. I mean, it's a remarkable story. But when you just look at the breadth of what he's written, I mean, not just the volume, but it's the fact that those pieces permeate every single section. I mean, Philip, as we know, is an absolute master, not just at writing blockbusting test pieces, but I mean, he's written some wonderful test pieces for third section, fourth section. He has this innate ability, and it is a gift. We've said this about Eddie Gregson before as well. Yeah. It's a gift to be able to write music that spans such a range of ability, from the world's best bands and players to community bands in the fourth section. It's a remarkable thing, and he's, as you say, he's an innately modest man, is Philip, isn't he? So
he is a modest man. He's got a very dry wit as well. He's great. He is great company to be next to. It was interesting, I think, with a couple of the pieces, and he turned around and said, I can't remember how that one went then. it was like a recall mechanism with him. I think he did, really, but it was interesting. Yeah. I think there was, I think when Trediga played Land of the Long White Cloud, and I think people would, I think Simone said something like, you could hear the waves crashing against the, the boats as, as the Polynesian people came into the Land of the Long White Cloud. And he said, nah, I literally wrote the piece, but then we handed it over to them to play. So there's always that something about the way in which he explains it. And as I said,
how fresh that piece still sounds, you. And after all these years, the first major piece he wrote for brass band after smaller pieces like Concert Prelude, how melodically, how fresh that music still sounds after all these years.
And I think the other part of it as well, talking about how concise, there's not a wasted bar with Philip Sparke's work at all.
Craftsmanship through and through.
Yeah, and everything just flows into the next section. It's a very organic feel about what he does. He did say, he says, I write music that I like, and I hope that other people like as well. And it's always the case. You never get people saying, "No, I didn't understand that," whatever it is. They all get it, because they're not sat there for 6 minutes within a piece wondering what's happening next, just full of effect, etc.
And also, there's never a minute where your focus isn't on the music. I mean, we're all used to hearing pieces where you can't help it. Your concentration wanes because the music loses its way. You just don't get that in Philip's music. I mean, that, as you say, that organic sense of structure makes it sound too formulaic. As you said, there's a flow. There's a natural elegance to the way he shapes a piece, which again, it's an innate gift. It really is.
And I think it is. And he writes. He knows who he's writing for. Lucerne Dances, for instance, is like a third section piece in Switzerland, and it's that those players can play it. Yeah. Then you have Music for a Festival, which we didn't hear yet, which is one of his great pieces, and you just know that it's aimed at exactly the right level for players to be challenged, but still be able to tackle it and successfully. And then at the top end of it, where we had Ravelin and Ravelin, which is a piece we haven't heard for a while.
What a clever piece.
And the way in which he so cleverly, as he says, it starts off as a brass band piece and ends up as the waltz, It was.
I mean, it's effectively, it is, as the title says, it's an unraveling. I mean, it's a deconstruction of La Valse and then putting it back together again, and ends pretty much pure revel, really. But I mean, the just the sheer brilliance of what he does in that piece with the material is that's the sign of a true master of his craft, and that's what Philip is.
I'll have to give a special mention. The RNCM brass band played a London Overture. It brought back
Yes.
memories for me. Rotterdam, 1991 European Championships.
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
trombone player that day literally messed up the cadenza. For some, because it's odd little pitches within the cadenza.
Yeah, it's a hard piece.
Yeah, I think the young lad who played, I think it was young boy Hartfield, I think it was. He just stood up and played it and just said, there we go, popped it off, no trouble whatsoever. Took me back to 1991 when all the trombone players were crying into their beer in Rotterdam at the time. And, how times have changed. Congratulations to him. So so that was the thread all the way through the festival, as we said, from the beginning right to the end when we had Music of the Spheres. And I have to say, without specifically saying, Music of the Spheres is still one heck of a challenge and will be one of the most popular test pieces at the British Open for many a year, because even the very best bands are going to find that is going to tax them to the hilt.
Yeah, it's a great piece. I think it's a great choice for that contest. I mean, there was a lot of talk about it around the RNCM at the weekend, and you could sense that people thought, they're looking forward to the Open. They really are looking forward to the Open. And again, it's one of his very finest pieces. It's just the way that music is structured and the way that it's put together. And my goodness, is it a good test piece? I mean, it tests every single element of a band. So it'll be a pleasure to listen to those performances in Symphony Hall come September.
Well, it was also a pleasure to listen to many of the world premieres that took place. We're going to say that we call them ensemble world premieres to start off with. And the one really that was the expectation was all about, of course, was Orbital by Richard Blackford. It came about as there's Richard there, as I say, with link to 5 commissioning bands and also Radio 3 and Nimbus Music Publishing. We had Anthony Smith, the managing director, and he was thrilled to come to the event. Nimbus wants to really connect with the brass banding world. Richard Blackford really wants to connect with the brass banding world. And strangely, there was a connection between him and Philip Sparke. They were both at the Royal College of Music.
They were
I think
a couple of years apart. But
couple of years apart, and they were reminiscing about teachers who taught them, etc. And there was something, I have to say, about Orbital that was a reminder almost of Sparke's works as well. Very concise, around about 15 and a half minutes in length. The demands were very challenging.
They were.
But they weren't unnecessary. So we didn't go 20 seconds into it and had an eye-popping euphonium cadenza or a soprano player playing screaming up in the air. Everything was considered. Everything was so well structured. There was an organic growth about it. There was a narrative lead to the music all the way through, from the time that they blasted off, time they were going around the Earth, to the time that they splashed down back at the end with the astronauts. It really did make sense. It was a fine piece, and hopefully one that we're going to hear many, many more times, because there were a number of very interested people from the European banding scene, etc., who made sure that they came to hear that world premiere played, I have to say, quite superbly by the Corey Band.
Yeah, well, you've summed it up perfectly, Ewan. I think what struck me about Orbital is, first of all, Richard Blackford obviously didn't approach the work as a test piece. I have to say, I think it would make a very good test piece, having heard it, because it has all the essential ingredients, but not at the expense of the music. And it's quite fascinating because, there's some wonderful atmospheres in it. My goodness, it's a tough piece. Some of the solos in it, euphonium, cornet, some really, really challenging solo playing, and some very, very tough ensemble playing as well. But as you said, there's a very strong sense of narrative. It's based on the book, the Booker Prize-winning novel, I think, by Samantha Harvey. Quite remarkable that it's about orbiting at 17,500 miles per hour, which gives you 16 sunsets and 16 sunrises in the space of one day. The concept of it is fabulous, but the piece itself, that strong sense of narrative that binds it together, and the strong sense of structure, it's all based on very, very small motif heard at the very outset of the piece in the horns, and then that little motif, I think it's just a little 3-note motif, is subjected to all forms of transformation and metamorphosis, but very, very cleverly done, very, very cleverly structured, but a wonderfully exciting piece to listen to, and it clearly went down very well in the hall. Corey, as you said, gave an excellent first performance of it, and in fact we'll be playing it again over the next week or two, but we'll talk about that later. It was quite a premiere for a composer that hasn't written for brass band before, but he's got quite a pedigree as Richard, hasn't he, Ewan? We
Any man who just drops in that he spent some time with Hans Werner Henze, you're talking with somebody then who was in a different league, I think.
He's got my admiration just for that one fact that he actually spent time in Italy working with Henze.
Done a number of film scores as well, all that type of stuff. So he's so
200 film scores he's written, which is quite remarkable in itself.
Yeah, he was talking about the discipline of writing, they would call him in the morning. He had to produce only about 4 minutes work, but it had to be there,
fully
ready.
Orchestrated.
Fully orchestrated and there on the stand at 11:30 in the morning. If not, they would get somebody else in. So it was incredible. The first of our comments have come through. It's from our great friend John Sturzacker, who I have to say I must thank because he took some tremendous pictures of the Black Dyke concert, which you'll see appearing throughout our broadcast tonight. John, great to have you back, seeing you there. He says, "It is sad that a lot of the new pieces may never be performed again. I would love to see our top bands adding more challenging music to their normal programmes." Indeed, but these bands really do, as I say, at the festival, they embrace these works. And as we talk through a couple more of these world premieres, some of them you only hear the once. But it's great to hear them just the once. Some test pieces we hear time and time again, and I have to say, doesn't do anything for me. Some of these pieces do they do have a lasting impression.
I think one of the things that gave me hope, Ewan, relative to John's comment there, is that what we actually got was a huge breadth of new pieces. I mean, there were pieces that were literally 3 or 4 minutes long, right up to major pieces. I mean, obviously Orbital being one of them at 15, 16 minutes. Phil Lawrence's Melisande, more of that in a little while. But there was a huge breadth, and actually some of the smaller pieces particularly, I think, would make great concert works away from something like the Festival of Brass. And you would hope that the bands that are playing them and the conductors that have approached them with such open-mindedness and such enterprise in some cases will be keen to take some of those pieces and play them in different settings and different environments. So I have to say that there'll be a mix. That John is right in that some of them won't be heard again. I accept that. But I think there
may be voices that those pieces may not be heard again, but hopefully the composers themselves will write other works which will be heard again. Just a couple of points with these ensemble world premieres. There was the smaller pieces, Descent by Mark Bowden, which was played by Corey. It was a piece that he was written initially for the National Orchestra of Wales, which he transcribed then for brass band. Really interesting little piece. He comes from a brass band background. He used to play with Desford.
He did, played cornet for Desford.
I didn't realise that. So his was an interesting piece. And there was 2 little pieces by the RNCM brass band, Tabby, the Journey by Theo Koita. And also there was Ondinas by Helena Zekowska. Both of them small pieces, but explored texture and colour. They weren't trying to do high pop and virtuosity or whatever. They'd found their voices and what they wanted to say. And were brave enough to put it forward, and they were 2 really interesting pieces, I have to say. All of them which were featured.
I've scribbled down some notes about those 2 very pieces, and next to Tabby, the Journey, some aleatoric exploration in that piece, but it was like a slowly shifting study in timbre and texture. Only a short piece, as you say, but a piece that just tantalised your ear with what was done. And the same with Ondinas. I mean, Ondinas Brighouse played that in the final concert. The composer, Helena Zekowska, as you say, is a student at the RNCM. Very accomplished little piece, which was rooted in mythical sea creatures.
Water sprites, I think it was, wasn't it?
But again, really interesting use of sonority, luminous textures, oscillating cornets. Both really imaginative little pieces that left you thinking, I'd like to hear more by this composer, and you just hope that they will go on and write more.
Well, certainly one person who picked up on it was Alec Gallagher, and Alec, he's a regular with us, of course, and he's not a contest man; he's a concert man. He's an absolute regular at the RNCM. I think he's been going for well over 30 years there. I didn't manage to catch up with him. I wish we did. And he said, I thought Ordinas was very impressive, so much so that I was hoping it would be longer. And I think a lot of people felt that, not just with that piece, but some of the other ones. I think they are given a remit. I think David Thornton said that, they have to be within this little time frame to start off with so they can be included in major programs such as this. But what it does offer is that first step for them to find out, when a real top-class band can really capture what they are thinking about. They can amend it and whatever. I thought it was those performances were really, really interesting.
I agree with Alec. I mean, that piece, probably what, three or 4 minutes long, and no more than that. But considering that she's still a student at the RNCM, not a postgrad student, an undergraduate student, I think. Real maturity about that piece and an inquiring musical mind, considering that I'm assuming that she's new to brass bands and this is possibly her first piece for brass band. Well, that was a pretty impressive debut, and as Alex says, it was almost over before it started. It was so short, and it left you thinking, I'd like to hear more of this. So.
Well, some of the other ones as well, we could touch on them quickly, those ones. There was Aureum Spiriti by Jakob Philip Larsen, which was a real, sugary boost that we needed in the second half with the Black Dyke Band. He's a very experienced composer and arranger, so we knew what we were getting there from that one. And then we had three pieces, which we want to touch on. Wildfire by Bruce Broughton. Of course, there's a man who inhabits a very different world. So much so, I think he did say, didn't he buy the house of Johnny Weissmuller? He's
apparently just bought Johnny Weissmuller's old mansion in California.
That's one for the kids. They won't remember him. He was the original Tarzan, as they say.
I don't know whether he'll be swinging and making Tarzan noises in the garden.
But his was an interesting piece. It reflected on the wildfires in Santa Monica and that part of it there. But it was a piece that, rather than just trying to be very explosive, there was a relentlessness about it, almost ominous. You can't outrun fire. No. And it was paced all the way through. It didn't go any much quicker, whatever. It shot off in different directions, very capricious in its way, and it didn't make any difference between fame or fortune, whether or not you were a film star like Johnny Weissmuller or a firefighter. It didn't. Anything that came in its path was destructive. That was a very interesting work.
Well, it started just from the flicker of flames in the corners, wasn't it? It started quietly, and you could almost sense the flickering of the flames as the fire started. And actually, what was great about that was Bruce Broughton was there. He was in the audience. He spoke at length, very eloquently, about the piece, what inspired it, from personal experience, because he had friends that lost their homes.
I think he was quite moved. He was when he was talking when he was talking about there. Quickly, two other ones that we did really at the time we spoke with: the Green Chapel by Claire Cope with the Bones Apart trombone concerto.
What a fabulous piece!
Whoa, that was a real highlight. I have to say, it was a real highlight for me. There was an eeriness about it, especially at the opening. It was about almost like there was a mythical world, all about religious repression.
Set in the Peak District, though, wasn't it? So it's inspired by the Peak District. But as you say, the opening. I mean, what I loved about that opening was she set a really, really unique atmosphere. Just eerie muted glissandos in the trombones, and her use of harmony. Well, her use of dissonance really was very, very clever, and it, as you said, it was eerie. It really was quite unnerving.
You were immersed by the music, wasn't it? And then it came to that almost like that gunshot finale that came from it, and it was like the disembodied voice, which prior
I think
to
was called the shot, wasn't it? That final movement.
But I have to say, I hope we get to hear much more from Claire Cope in the future.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the other thing, interestingly, like the trombones were like almost, I said, they were like sentinels.
Yeah.
They were the people that were drawing you in. They were like ghostly figures, keeping drawing you in. This is what was happening.
And Bones Apart were fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. I mean, Helen
super
Vollum
players.
On principle. I mean, all four of them played wonderfully, wonderfully well. It was a fascinating piece from start to finish in every way. I mean, orally it was fascinating, harmonically, texturally, but to pit the four trombones against the band or to use them with the band in the way that she did was very, very cleverly nuanced, I thought.
And quickly, the one I have to say, I did tell you about this, is Melisande by Phil Lawrence. As I said,
different.
This was all about a day in the life of a dog, but it was a dog that seemed to be trained by Hans Werner Henze, and the dog was rhubarb out of rhubarb and custard. It was wonderful fun. A bit bonkers it was, but
must have been one very tired dog at the end of it, and that's all I can say.
Yeah, it did go on a little bit, I think, a little bit. But I have to say, it's such an and this is one of the great joys, going back to John Sturzaker's point exactly, you hear pieces that come from left field. And you're not going to hear them anywhere else. And we must have these pieces written for us, and we must perform them. And it is because we've heard other pieces by Phil Lawrence, but this one was a very personal piece as well. But it struck an odd chord, but it certainly struck a chord, and it had you thinking and talking about it and recalling the piece. So those were the world premieres, and I have to say, each one of them really made a lasting impression. So we move on then to the soloists, Chris, and
indeed.
There were some brilliant soloists. We're going to name the ones first of all, and then it's a bit unfair to say there was a star soloist, but there was one that stood out. We had the trombonist Jesper Juel Vindal with Concord Brass playing the Grondal trumpet, and Brett Baker with Corey Band playing Wilby's Light Fantastic. We had the euphonium stars, Glenn Van Looy with Tredegar playing the Bourgeois Euphonium Concerto, Chris Robertson with Brighouse of Rastrick playing the very Nordic Torstein Åge Nielsen's Euphonium Concerto. We had the youngsters, Louis Croney with the RNCM Brass Band on soprano with Darko Bright, Phoebe Mallinson with the Yorker Youth Band playing the Heims Concertino for Flugel, Oliver Tattersall with the Junior RNCM Brass Band. We had the duet with Ada Bukaris and Tom Hutchinson. I think they come up there. That was the Gemini duet, I think it was.
Philip Sparke,
That was the Philip Sparke one, which came up there. But going back to the one that really stood out, Yasuaki Fukuhara.
My goodness.
There he is, and I tell you what, he was the undoubted superstar of the whole weekend, playing the Simon Dobson Percussion Concerto. It was almost like a mixture of absolute alchemy of artistry and theatrics, but oh my word, what a performance. Standing ovation at the end, absolutely spontaneous and thoroughly deserved.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like it in a brass band concert, actually. I mean, I've never seen a player inhabit the music, literally inhabit the music in the way that he did. I mean, first of all, he played it from memory. I mean, I was talking to Simon
That was
Dobson.
phenomenal enough,
I was talking to Simon Dobson afterwards, and he said, I'll show you the score of this piece at some point, because he said, I can't believe that he played it from memory neither. An absolutely astonishing achievement, but he lived every note. He lived, sensed, and it was sensory. There was you couldn't take your eyes off him. He was spellbinding. It was absolutely mesmerizing to watch him. In fact, to the point that there was such a strong visual connection between the audience and the player that I really need to listen to the music again, because your brain didn't know at times whether to focus on him visually or to focus on the music itself. Such was the connection between the player and the music. It was an absolutely remarkable experience, and as you say, the audience just spontaneously rose to their feet at the end, and he was clearly moved. I mean, you could see the emotion on his face. It was a very special, very, very special moment.
He was encased, wasn't he? Almost in a frame, it was almost like a cell.
Yeah.
He was actually almost imprisoned there, but he was the freest of spirits.
Yes.
That was I think that was the key. He was surrounded by gongs and cymbals and xylophones, whatever. I just thought it was remarkable what he actually did, but he communicated that, and it's difficult with percussion because people are not with the euphonium, you can always understand what's going on. Sometimes with percussion, you can't. But the way in which we actually done it was superb. Malcolm Wood has come on to us. Well done, Malcolm. I know you were there and I know you thoroughly enjoyed it. He said the percussion concerto has to be one of the finest individual performances that's been performed and witnessed in the time the event has been part of the RNCM.
Can't disagree with that.
No, I don't think many people will disagree with that. And as I say, there's been a very, very high bar set over the years. But you have to say, Yasuaki Fukuhara, if you ever get the opportunity to hear him perform, go. Whatever it is, make sure that you go there, because that was something very, very special indeed.
It was.
As we say, some of the other soloists, every one of them was outstanding. As we said, the two euphonium performers, Glenn Van Looy, Chris Robertson, two contrasting pieces. The Bourgeois, which, I said, much like the Philip Lawrence piece, is really on the edge of pastiche and acidity, really, with its wit, but such technical demands. Glenn Van Looy just brushed them off there.
God, what a player! I mean, it was. It's as you say. There's typical bourgeois. I mean, so much of bourgeois music has wit in it, but it's also very clever. But Glenn Van Looy just didn't put a foot wrong. I mean, it was a fabulous performance.
Yeah, and the same with Chris Robertson, which was I have to say, was a very Nordic euphonium concerto. It was a bit like one of those Nordic Scandi dramas where you see somebody walk out of the door and they see a dead body next to a frozen horse, and then you wonder what's happening, But it was so atmospheric, and some of the technical things that he achieved, I think, the multiphonics that he was doing, and it was almost like jazz inflections within the music. Wonderful performance from there. Louis Croney, I'm going to just give a mention to the young player. I think we got a little image of him there with the RNCM brass band conducted by Katrina Marcella Wheeler with Darko Bright. There he is. He's on the right hand side. He's not the one with the beard, and that's not Katrina either with the beard. So Louis, he was there. Super player. It's a link between the Swiss Brass Band Association and the National Solo Championships. If we ever go to the Solo Championships, the standard there is incredible for that young man, and he is a young man, to come over and give the performance that he did on soprano was something else. He plays fourth man down, I think, with Valesia, travels 3 hours each way to go to band. That's his dedication. And you could
I'll tell you what, to play soprano like that and then sit fourth man down with Valesia.
It is. And the final one we have to say is the one that we talked about, the duet between Adam Bakaris and Tom Hutchison with Black Dyke. It was Philip Sparke's Gemini. Now, I feel a bit terrible saying this, but for me, this didn't quite work. And it wasn't to do with the music. For me, it was to do with the way in which, almost like the way in which they were placed. They were
quite a long way apart, weren't they? They were quite a long way apart. And I think if you took them individually, I think Adam Bakaris played beautifully, and so did Tom. But somehow that, as you say, maybe it was the distance, Ewan.
Yeah, there was just that, because the original work was for euphonium and trumpet. And so it's been written for cornet and euphonium. But that distance between them, and because we are used to hearing the cornet and the euphonium by their own seats, have them turned around the other way, or it just captured, your brain had to take a little bit while to get it. Beautifully played individually, but it would have been, I think, if they had been brought forward together at the front. I think we would have heard it in all.
I think this was a wind band piece originally, Ewan, wasn't
it? It was, from 2016 for
Japanese,
I think, whatever. Yeah. Right, other highlights then. We are moving on. We've got to get a lot to get in. And we have to say, our great friend, and we had a wonderful night after this performance with Paul Mealer.
we did.
Tranquil Abiding. There's Paul there. He wasn't looking like that when we had him on the after the concert.
We had a wonderful
night with him. Yeah. Great, I have to say, great company. His piece, Tranquil Abiding, you've heard that it wasn't a world premiere, but in effect, it was a premiere of this because it's been amended. But again, like the Cope work, it was all about atmosphere and stillness, and strangely, a bit like the Fukuhara and the Simon Dobson piece about Buddhism.
Yes,
but it was there was that strange little link between that, but. He writes beautifully about stillness and tranquility, and that was that work as well. He's a wonderful, wonderful composer.
He is, and well, it's Buddhism meets moonlit walks in North Wales. That's sort of where I think the inspiration came from, was when he was walking. But it's, as you say, you've got the two outside movements. The final movement is called Hymn, with this fiendishly difficult toccata in the middle.
Oh yeah,
I have to say, I heard it. As we know, we've talked about it. I heard the premiere in St Asaph. I was at the premiere in St Asaph in November. And we felt then that maybe the band were just a little bit too far away from the audience. This performance at the RNCM, I mean, first of all, Foden's played wonderfully well.
Yeah.
But it really there was an intimacy about it that I think communicated with the audience. And I have to say that there were people with tears literally running down their cheeks in the final hymn. That's how much. It was
like a mix of a Buddhist mantra and a almost like a Methodist hymnal. Both of them came together. But again, that's the type of music that he does so well. It was absolutely wonderful. I'm going to just give a couple of mentions. Time's pressing on. Per Norgard's arrangement of the Beatles hit "Do It."
Yeah.
My word,
I love this. I
was an absolute corker.
What a piece.
I have to say, and the odd thing, it was written in 1968. The pop song was out in 64, so the Beatles were still going, and somebody, I don't know if it was illicit when it was actually done, but it was time. It could have been written yesterday. It was so modern, so up to date.
I don't think any of us really knew the Beatles song that it was based on, but I've got this wonderful image of this piece, which was written in 1968, as you say, which is probably sat in the bottom of some drawer or dusty cabinet in some room for donkey's years. But Per Norgård is an incredible composer. I was talking to Gavin Higgins the other day about his symphonies. Gavin's a huge fan of Per Norgård. But this little piece, it's only short, 3 short movements, but he deconstructs the song. He literally takes it apart and wraps it up in so many different atmospheres.
But you could still hear it in your mind, couldn't you?
Yeah, you can.
That was the trick of it.
Very, very clever little piece, but also hugely entertaining. And for me, that was one of the highlights of the festival. That piece was such a discovery. And played so well by Concord.
Malcolm Wood has come back on and say how impressive were Concord. They were indeed. They had worked their socks off. Yeah. They actually gave a concert in a pub. I think earlier on, I was on after they actually played. So they had a wonderful time, and they did Danish banding so proud, as I say. They're fine representatives. They'll be at the European Championships now later on this year as well. Plenty of other great highlights. We could touch on them all, from Mia Lee's When One Sees Light with the Yorkshire Youth Band, Edelyn Waddle's Gold Saturday, which is great to hear, Royal Park's George Lloyd, and we had them there. But things to mention, a couple of talking points at the end of it. It was good to see the festival started off with Stephen Mead's latest cohort intake of euphonium baritone players. Blimey, there's a production line that's coming out of the RNCM now, isn't it? Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Well, Stephen was telling me a couple of months ago how pleased he was, and David Thornton as well, with the intake of euphonium and baritone players this year. And it was a fabulous little concert, that, wasn't it? They finished with Steve was conducting, and they finished with Blaze, a little piece by Jim Fieldhouse, which Jim stood up and conducted himself.
Yeah,
a real little rhythmically driven piece of funk and you could tell they loved playing it. There was a kind of infectious enthusiasm about it.
I have to say, the RNCM students, not only with the baritones and euphoniums, but with the RNCM junior brass, and also then with the current band, there are some very, very impressive young players there who I'm sure are going to make their mark in the future. Just some about the other little bits and pieces quickly then. I was lucky to speak with doing the 4BR interview there. That's not me on there. I was actually taking the picture. I should have been in the middle of that one. So there's Richard Blackford, there's Anthony Smith on Nimbus on the right-hand side, Philip Sparke in the middle, and David Thornton, of course, there. Very interesting to talk to the two composers and how things have changed over the last 50 years since they were students together at the Royal College of Music, and what they see with the challenges currently and also ahead with the rise of AI. So I really enjoyed that. And then there were some other things as well, things like the brass bands and the media, which I think if that had been, there was a lady who was in the audience and she hit the nail on the head. If that had been at the beginning of the festival, we could have talked about that as it went along. It was a little bit late on the day, it was squeezed in a little bit, a bit of a missed opportunity, which was a real pity.
I think people were very tired, weren't they? It was the end of Sunday afternoon. Corey had just played. There was a little bit of a gap then before Big House were concluding the festival in the evening. And the lady that made that point, who isn't a player, isn't a brass bander, she was there purely to enjoy the music, and yet made what was a very, very pertinent point, as you say, that slot needed to be at a time in the festival when it could have been a lot more constructive than it actually turned out to be.
Well, I think overall, we thoroughly enjoyed it. Everybody who went there thoroughly enjoyed it. There may be tweaks to the festival in the future. I know Dr. David Thornton and others are looking at things to keep it refreshed.
Yeah.
But at the present time, if you're not there, and there are a number of people who do not appear from the brass banding world in the UK, and I have to say, they need to hang their heads in shame because they need to be at that event. It is the showcase for everything good that we do. And as other people who were there said, if we are going to push that message out, especially to the national media, and we can control it and talk about that excellence, then everybody needs to be on board.
Yeah, indeed.
Right.
Absolutely.
Next week, I'm off to the Norwegian National Championships. As I say, they take place in Bergen. And it's got Bergen. The question mark isn't to say will I or will I not be there. That's the sign outside the airport, I think. It says it's Bergen. I think it's like an exclamation mark. It is with that one there. It's about 80 bands taking part. It will be broadcast on Brass TV. So make sure if you can't actually fly out to Bergen, you can actually tune in and enjoy the performances. I have to say, Chris, as always, you were there last year. You've been a number of occasions. I really enjoy going there. There's something for everybody to enjoy, and especially in the top section, which this year has 10 really top-class bands, and the set work is Concerto No. 1 by Derek Bourgeois. We heard a little bit of his music at the RNCM. The Concerto No. 1 is all about Jamaica rumba, revel, and rampant war ostriches.
A work of glorious eccentricity, Ewan. That's absolutely glorious piece. But
I should say it's like Polly Put the Kettle On meets Revel in a motor car, and then at the end of it you have these huge birds pecking you to death as they go along. Only Bourgeois could get away with it.
Absolutely. Bourgeois at his most bizarre. Yeah.
But it is one heck of a piece to play. Yeah. It makes sense when it's all put together. The middle movement especially is beautiful. There's that, it really is like pastiche revel, but so much more than that. But one of the things I know that you wanted to talk about, there are 10 bands in the top section: Bjorsvik Brass, Bråten Brass, Eikanger, Jaren Horn Music Foreningen, Klepper Musiklag, Manga, Oslo Fjord Brass, Oslo Brass Band, Stavanger Brass Band, and Turtnes Brass Band. But a lineup of conductors. These shows what this competition means to these bands. They have brought in the big guns to do the conducting.
You look down this list, Ewan, and I mean, I'll start at the top. Let's rattle through a couple of them very quickly. Andreas Hansen, what a stylish conductor Andreas Hansen is. I mean, we've seen him and admired him on many occasions. David Morton, winner of the National Championships in London with Desford last year, of course. Inga Bergby with Eikanger. Now, we've seen a fair bit of Inga Bergby in the past, but not recently. He sort of disappeared for a while. Florent Didier has worked extensively with Eikanger. But this year, Inga Bergby is back, and he's a very, very interesting musician.
I should say. And then you've got Professor David King with Manga.
Indeed. Peter Sebastian Silve with Oslo Fjord.
Sebastian Hauke, so he's a really up-and-coming talent.
Yeah.
And then the great Ivan Mailemans.
What a lineup. What a lineup.
Yeah, and then Paul Holland with Turtnes Brass there. Absolutely fantastic. What I will say, I'm going to go out there and be reporting on it live. I've got Camilla Söderström de Witt, if that's the right way of doing it. She's going to be helping me to give a Nordic comparison about the performance as well. Really looking forward to it. And I have to say, some of the own choices, especially in the elite section, we got everything from Vienna Nights to A Road Less Travelled By, Titan's Progress, For the Forest of the Trees, This World, Dear Cassandra, oh my word, blockbuster after blockbuster after blockbuster. And then in the other sections, where I think reality and ambition are two distant cousins on some occasions. For instance, in the 5th division, we've got Northern Passages, Idealist, Whispers of Forgotten Tales. In the 3rd section, Tallis Variations, The Wayfarer by Eric Ball, Black Gold by Thierry de la Royale. In the 4th section, Land of the Long White Cloud. In the 4th section,
you've got to think about a band that isn't in the elite section that's playing Music of the Spheres, Ewan, haven't you? I mean,
Essay in the 4th section.
This relationship or lack of relationship, whichever way you want to look at it, between reality and unreality, as you say, this is a feature of the Norwegian Nationals that we love, isn't it? Year after year after year.
I have to say, there's a great atmosphere there as well, and you know they do buy into it. And I sometimes you raise your eyebrows at some of the choices, but even in the 1st section, we've got Vienna Nights, Music of the Spheres, as I said in the 1st section, the Cosmographic Mystery, Ingeborg Wilhelmsen, again a composer we love to hear at the RNCM festival. So we've got everything there. I'm really looking forward to it. I couldn't tell you beforehand who would be the favourites for the title in any of the sections, but when I go there, sit in my seat at the front, I just enjoy those performances.
I'm envious I can't be there this year, Ewan. But
there are a number of Brits going over this year as well. There's usually I meet up with some people who make the trip every year. I think our friends Chris and Tom from That's Not Brass are going. Is it That's Not Brass or It's Not Brass? I always get it wrong.
That's not banding.
That's not banding. Oh, blimey. Sorry, boys. I always get it wrong. I don't do it deliberately.
Sorry, Chris.
So I think they're out there as well. So I hope that they enjoy it. So, as part of being at the review program, we hopefully got enough time to fit these in. We're going for the reviews. And I have to say, Chris, there was only one CD, first of all, that we had to pick. And of course, here it is. It's the Hall of Healing, Yasuaki Fukuhara. And it's been recorded with the Black Dyke Band. It's on the Doyen label, and also included in that is the Simon Dobson percussion. So that's going to be absolutely fantastic.
It's a must.
I'm quite sure after his performance there with Black Dyke, it sold out on the World of Brass stand. Luckily for me, I managed to nick a copy. I wouldn't say nick, I was given a copy. But I'm going to make sure that I review that. Please, if you can get it, it's on Wobplay if you're not a CD player, but if not, go it onto the World of Brass site. My word, you will enjoy every moment of that. So that's a great one there.
And also worth pointing out, Ewan, that the performance of the percussion concerto will go out on Radio 3 because Radio 3 have taken Black Dyke's concert in its entirety. So that performance, sadly without the visuals, which were, as we've said, pretty spectacular. But nonetheless, that performance will be going out on Radio 3 very shortly. Definitely something to listen out for.
Well, you'll be able to enjoy it as well because Wobplay also recorded every performance, and I think they're going to be going out one each week now over the next few weeks, putting everything together. So please look out for those ones. And
Orbital will also be heard on Radio 3.
Yeah, my second recommendation is Three Voices by Bastien Beaumet. Now, here is a euphonium player, French euphonium player, played with Paris Brass Band. We've heard him on a number of occasions. Best an artist, goes all over the world. He is the generation, I would suggest, of Glenn Van Looy, that generation. What a player this lad is. I have to say, there is a touch of French flair about everything he does. There are only 4 pieces on the CD. The Unknown Soldier by Ricardo Moya. I think he's the one who did the tuba concerto, I think.
Yeah, for Tommy Tynan,
a couple of years ago. There's a piece by Gabriel Philippot, Dragonfly by Thierry de la Royale, and strangely, a River Dance by Bill Whelan. But he is linked up with, and I have to say that, the Orchestra de Harmonie de la Ville de Havre, the Make It Slide Ensemble, Orchestra Voltige, and the Musique de Gardien de la Préfecture de Police de Paris. And that's my best French pronunciation.
Well done.
I got to say that. There we are. Multilinguist I am. As so please get that. Now, one for yourself. Now, I know people will say, why have you picked this? Because it's an orchestral recording.
A good reason.
But there is a reason. And it is... It's Walton Sinfonia of London, conducted by John Wilson. He's got the cello concerto, but also his first symphony. Tell us a little bit about that.
Walton's First Symphony, for many, many years, Walton's First Symphony, the benchmark recording and the recording that all the critics go to is Andre Pevin's recording of it from many years ago with the LSO. And many people will tell you that recording has never been bettered. For me, this is probably the closest rival to that recording that I've ever heard. I mean, the First Symphony is an absolutely magnificent piece, but John Wilson, the brass playing on this recording is just absolutely incredible. And you've got three works: the First Symphony in a laser-like, almost lacerating performance at times. The cello concerto, really beautiful piece, which is very reminiscent of Ischia, where Walton wrote it. And then Scapino, the comedy overture, which kicks the disc off. Again, fabulous brass writing in that. Walton did love his brass. But this is just an absolutely splendid disc, and I think the link that John Wilson has with the brass world, as we've said before, he started in brass bands, percussionist with Eddie Band many years ago. He knows his brass. He hand selects his brass sections as he does with all the other sections for his orchestra. You can tell. The brass playing on this recording, believe me, is some of the finest brass playing you will ever hear on an orchestral disc. It's absolutely fabulous stuff.
And I have to say, John Wilson has just been nominated for a Royal Philharmonic Society Award as conductor of the year. And as I say, it is these type of people that we need to reconnect with, embrace, and bring back as often as we possibly can into the brass banding world. He did the CD, the Bliss CD, of course, with Black Dyke. He's done the Onyx Brass, etc. as well. We need him there. So the reason why we are doing these things, there are, you may say it's a tenuous connection, but my word, it's a connection that needs to be strengthened, and we need to pull John Wilson back towards us within the brass banding world.
We like our tenuous connections. We'll do a few more over the coming
We'll have to do a few more of those.
Yeah,
right then, concerts. One that I have to say, somebody else who has got a Royal Philharmonic Society instrumentalist nomination is Peter Moore. And he has got a concert coming up. He's very busy nowadays as a solo artist. He's got a concert coming up called Trivergence, which links him with Andy Wood and Mark Nightingale, the great jazzer Mark Nightingale, and a special trombone octet. That's right up your street there. And the street that it's in is in Oxford Street in London at Regent Hall in London on Saturday the 31st. It will feature reworking of Bernstein's iconic score to West Side Story, as well as the Porgy and Bess Suite by Gershwin. It's hosted by the British Trombone Society. If you're anywhere near it, please go along. Peter Moore is, the player when he comes onto with the trombone. He is branching out into so many different directions, and I think if you can pop along to support that, that'd be fantastic. The other one for us is the Corey Band, and they will be at Trinity Academy in Bristol. There they are. Look out for that sign with the red dragon on Sunday the 1st of February at 3 p.m. And the reason why we recommend you to go there, because if you haven't heard Orbital, then now's your chance, because if you go along to Trinity Academy at 3 p.m, they will be performing Orbital by Richard Blackford again. Also, Light Fantastic, Ravel and Unraveling, and also some of their brass in concert program, I understand, too. So there's an opportunity again. If you didn't hear Orbital to start off with, and you're anywhere near Bristol, again, please go along for that. And finally, in the last few minutes, Chris, we have just enough time for our, talk about tenuous connections, my LP choices. I've been waiting all day for this one. And the first one is, now, because of Music of the Spheres being played at the British Open Championships later this year,
inspired
I thought to myself, let's be inspired by the planets, by the, what's out there beyond the realms of our earthly bounds. And this is it. It is the music of Patrick Moore. And if you remember, this is one for the kids, if you remember Patrick Moore, he was a much parodied figure in the 1970s. However, if it wasn't for him, the Apollo moon landings wouldn't have taken place, because he helped chart the geography of the moon. So when Neil Armstrong was running out of fuel, he had Patrick Moore to thank that he could find a parking space for Apollo 11 on the moon. However, Patrick Moore was also, he was a gifted polymath, I think, in many ways.
He was,
and he was a surprisingly rather good
xylophonist. Yeah.
And there's some great pieces on here. He says on the back of this cover, when I was a teenager, I was not at all interested in jazz, the ancestor of pop music. Neither I was really interested in Beethoven or Bach. I liked tunes, and my idols were composers such as Strauss, Sousa and Sullivan. And you get plenty of it on this. Conducted ever ready by Jeffrey Brand. And there's some brilliant pieces. There's a March of the Centaurs, and then there is a piece after it called Penguin Parade, which is a xylophone solo, which Mr. Fukuhara should do as a lollipop encore, I have to say. It is absolutely bonkers. But if I don't know how many of these you can actually still get in the shops, but if you ever find it, it is great fun.
That would be quite a find, I think. Quite a find.
It is. I found it right to the back of my cupboard, I have to say. But there is a Sunrise Polka. There's an intermezzo from Perseus and Andromeda, which I think is played by the baritone, or it could be the trombone sounding like a baritone. I'll have to do that one there. So we'll see that one also. Just flicking you back, Alex Ellis come back as well. He says the scherzo from Walton 1 strongly influenced by Wilfred Heaton's scherzo in his partita.
That's right.
Another reason to buy it. So there we are. Tenuous links strengthened there by people who know much more about Walton's First Symphony than I actually do. Thank you, Alex, for that one there. And finally, the last of my recommendations. One of the news items that came out on the weekend at the Royal Northern College of Music was a rather sad announcement that the European Brass Band Championships will not be taking place in England in 2028. So I looked through to find out what tenuous link I could come up with, and I found the highlights of the 1982 Brass Band Festival. This was a time when the European Championships took place over a weekend and managed to pack in one heck of a lot of stuff. And on that weekend, we had the National Championships, which were won by the Corey Band, playing contest music, if I think, in 1982.
First year of their hat-trick, 82.
It was. Kilmarnock Area Schools Band became the Butlins champions, so that was on the one day. And then the following day, we had the European Championships, where the Black Dyke Band, conducted by the great Major Peter Parks, became the European champions. And it's almost prophetic in year, because 1982, if you just turn around the 8 and the 2 to be 2 and 8. And I don't mean that in old money. There's Tragic Overture by Johann Brahms. And that, I think, sums up the news that the European Championships were not going to be coming to Britain in 2028. But 1982 was actually the last year in which the European Championships took place at the Royal Albert Hall. The following year, I think it went to, I can't remember. I think it went to Rotterdam or something like that. I think I went then. So that was the last time. So I think we may have to wait a few more years before that. And we have to wait a few more years before we can buy LPs like this one as well. Double LP, all for £6.99.
Is that the recording that's got refrains and cadenzas by Thomas Wilson on it?
It has.
I thought so. What a fine piece that is. And a great performance.
It's got Sinfonietta as well. And halfway through, it's got a certain M. Murphy trumpet playing as part of the gala concert. Whatever happened to him? But there we are, Chris. It's been fantastic catching up with you again to talk our way through everything about the Royal Northern College of Music Festival, which we thoroughly enjoyed. I have to say, if you weren't there, you missed the treat, but you can get the highlights, as we say.
Go next year.
Make sure that you go there, book your tickets, but you can enjoy the highlights on WobPlay. You will be able to enjoy some of the highlights on Radio 3, and you will be able to have a reprise of some of the music with Corey, for instance, playing in Bristol on the weekend. Thanks again, Chris, for everything that you've done. It only leaves it for me to say, for people out there, please comment when we put up the broadcast again on YouTube. Please subscribe, please notify, please comment and like. And hopefully, if we have enough people, we will be back again for next week. But that's it, Chris. Many thanks indeed.
Thanks,
We've got
Ewan.
a busy time ahead of us now over the next few weeks and months. But I'm quite looking forward to catching up with you again for the very next episode of the 4BR Review. Many thanks indeed, and good night to everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.